Goodbye, Joe.
Good luck, have fun.
Hello and welcome to the Comic Shop Does a Podcast with me, Aaron Z. Lee, who's soon to be replaced.
Hi, I'm Evan Coy, AI generated, and we're here with a very special guest today, who Aaron will introduce.
Our distinguished guest is Professor David Schofield, and this is a very special introduction provided to us by ChatGPT, which Evan solicited from ChatGPT, so I'm sure it's of the highest quality. Here we go. Damian Schofield is a highly regarded college professor who currently serves as an associate professor of biology at SUNY Oswego in New York. He has a passion for teaching and has been dedicated to the field of biology for over 25 years. Dr. Schofield earned his Bachelor of Science degree in zoology from the University of Wales, Aberystwyth,
I don't know that word.
and his PhD in reproductive endocrinology from the University of Wales, Cardiff.
Can I just stop you?
Okay.
Reproductive endocrinology is my hobby, not my work.
Why don't you introduce yourself? Because this is all completely wrong, but I thought it was so good, we just had to acknowledge it. Oh, we're talking AI tonight.
So I'm a professor of computer science at SUNY Oswego. I run I'm director of the master's program in human-computer interaction. And I specialize a lot in computer-generated imagery in different fields.
I didn't realize you had we went and saw Scott McCloud speak at Syracuse 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was
great.
awesome. Yeah.
And you had commented on my Facebook post. I didn't realize how into that you were. You say you use Scott McCloud's books in your classroom.
Understanding comics. Yeah, I use that in my class. I try and get my students to read it, but they don't read books much, but I try and get them to read it.
It's mostly pictures.
Yeah, I know, that's what I tell them. A lot of my work is about what you understand when you look at an image. So my research is a lot more psychology based, but I deal with computer generated images.
You did a TED Talk on it.
Yeah, the TED Talk was on bias in images, really.
Ooh.
How we can, not the kind of bias that's in the news, more about how, let's say the order the movies are put on Netflix isn't accidental. They can make you more likely to pick certain movies by the order they put them in or the type of pictures they use, and that's the kind of thing I look at.
Not big like lawsuit bias, but like little influencer bias.
Yeah, cognitive biases, small little biases that influence how you make these thousands of decisions every day based on images. My real speciality is looking at how that affects courtrooms.
Okay, interesting.
So if you put if you show people images of how a crime happened, that's not me.
No,
he
playing music.
put a little music in the back.
Just to confuse everybody.
Yeah. So if you
This is distracting.
no, it's okay. So if you were to ask someone if they saw a car crash, the same group of people saw a car crash, and you ask them how fast did the cars hit each other or collide with each other, people would say 30 miles an hour. But if you ask them how fast did the cars smash into each other, they'll say 40 miles an hour. And all you've done is change one word, and they saw exactly the same thing. And so if you show them images of that car crash, depending how you show it to them, you can completely change what they remember and what they saw.
That's wild.
Yeah. I wish we would have known, or I would have known how into Scott McCloud and images were to your profession, because it was a fantastic talk.
Oh, I bet.
It was the best talk I've ever been to.
Do you want to just sum it up for the
I use some of his YouTube stuff in classes, yeah.
Well, then you've seen like how good of a speaker he is. I mean, he did. Should I start off with like how he actually started?
Yeah, that was very interesting. It caught everybody off guard.
Yeah. So his wife, not to be disrespectful or anything, but his wife was in an automobile accident and did pass away some 10 months ago. So he hadn't been doing any talks since then, obviously. So this was his first one back,
Oh,
and
wow.
Syracuse graduate. I'm
Yeah,
not sure if
he-
you knew that. And
No.
he met his wife at Syracuse.
100 yards like to his right at the place where they used to play the movies on Saturday night
Oh,
because
man.
there was no Netflix.
Actually, it sounds like she was the Damien of Syracuse University. You were on the film program at.
No, I run a film club in town in Oswego.
Oh, so it's not affiliated with the university.
Well, it's run by professors from the. I run it with a film professor,
Yeah.
Josh Adams, who Jonathan knows.
So yeah, I guess you could make that parallel because she was kind of in charge of the. It was a film club because that was the only way you were going to watch a movie on campus. Is somebody had to get the reel and actually do it exactly like how you guys do it. And so that was, unexpected, but I think he kind of had to get that out of the way because of the location and the history. And
I saw Patton Oswalt give the first comedy talk, his first comedy show after his wife had died. So yeah.
yeah, it kind of like cleared the palate in a very kind of like respectful way.
Yeah, and
but
nobody knew. And like he said, you wanted to acknowledge some of the people that he worked with at Syracuse.
Yes.
I think some of the students are now professors there. Reconnecting with I guess I was thinking maybe he came there yearly, but he doesn't come there too often. But his first talk back, he goes, "I want to acknowledge somebody who's not here."
Yeah.
He puts up a picture and he tells the story of everything, and you're like, "Oh my god!"
Because he's always featured her in his. If you've watched his presentations, she factors into quite
definitely.
a bit. But I mean, it was his usual kind of like talking about images and showing sequences of images to kind of guide the perception of things and how it's in comics it's a spatial relationship between the different panels, but even that he even kind of relaxed on a little bit because he became kind of a because he was trying to define comics, which had never really been done in like such an expansive way before. So everybody's like been poking holes in it for like 30 years, 35 years, for however long it's been out now. And so he was kind of expanding his views on that. But then also like the interactive pieces of it too, because I think he had a little clicker, he had a giant pencil and stuff. So
he did a 311 slide PowerPoint presentation in an hour. So every slide lasted about I forget what I did the math, 8 seconds, 10 seconds, not even. And he even told the audience, "Don't take notes. I want you to be attentive, be in the moment." And for this, it was a student lecture basically that we were allowed to go to.
Yes.
And he said something along the lines of, "If you want to have a better understanding of this presentation at the end, I encourage you to get with 3 or 4 friends and discuss what took place." But he said, "I prefer if you didn't take notes," which I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, because he wants you to experience it rather than like write down the stuff. Because like he was going so, it didn't feel fast. It felt very natural in the flow of the presentation. But like if you went down to write something, you're gonna miss a couple slides, and he wants it's a full.
My big takeaway was it's not just he's a master of understanding how to communicate with icons and images, but he's studied just communication in general at such a high level.
That's what I use. Yeah, and his triangle of the abstract, representation is I still use that all the time. In everything I do.
We got a chance to talk to him afterwards, and I like Wesley the robot character is a direct piece of that representation thing. Like the way his face is more reductive is because of that triangle. Right. So I got a chance to like tell him that like this character here is because of this thing I read.
Our podcast is really about Aaron and I telling our customers the great things that we do. It has nothing to do.
I know I've talked to you before, Evan, about, or is it? I can't remember which one of you I talked to about Scott McCloud before.
It might be Evan. I don't know if we've talked about him before.
Yeah, I've talked to someone in the shop about him, and we were talking about how maybe it was Martin, but I find his actual comic work, hit and miss. Some of it I think is really good, and some of it I kind of. But one of the reasons for that, I think, is he's always experimenting.
Yes.
And so he's always pushing with new technologies that we're talking about tonight. But he was trying to do the Photoshop comics before anyone else.
And I think he'll be the first person to tell you that, some of these things don't land.
Yeah, but he's doing it at 72 DPI because he's like, it's for the web, darn it. Like, that's how they see him on the web. And then like later, you can't reprint that because it's all pixely. But yeah. But I admire that kind of like taking a big swing of like, okay, I think this is where this is going. I think we can do this and this and this, and it might be interesting. And then people are like,
No.
that didn't work.
Didn't work.
Even he admitted that
Reinventing comics.
his work was like he can be good,
No.
not so good, can be good, not so good.
Mm.
But I've got to read some more of his stuff. I really like. I only have a couple issues of Zot, but I got to read all of that
it's
because I love that
fantastic.
era.
It's fantastic stuff.
So we asked ChatGTP a few questions today, or GTP, correct? Yes.
Yeah.
We asked him about Wesley the robot, and I said,
boy.
could you tell us about Wesley the robot? And it said, I'm sorry, but as an AI language model, my knowledge cutoff is September 2021. I don't have any information about that comic book. It's possible that Wesley is a lesser-known or independent comic book series, but without further context or information, it's difficult to provide more specific details about it. So that's what we learned from ChatGTP about Wesley the robot.
Is that a burn?
Yeah, no, it does have a language a time cut off mid 2021. Yeah.
Well,
Can you explain what
Wesley has existed since 2008.
Can you explain what ChatGTP is? Because to me, that's not AI.
It all comes back from work. Artificial intelligence comes in waves.
Mhm.
You know, there was a big wave in the 50s, 60s, which died down. Then there was another big wave through the 80s, 90s, which died down. And now we're in this kind of third wave of AI.
It's like the third wave of ska in
Yeah.
1997.
It's exactly the same. I was going to say the same thing.
Thank you.
And AI is, at the moment, it's all neural networks and deep learning. So these systems are not programmed to do anything. They look at massive amounts of data and learn the models from that data. Now, usually we're training it on things like recognizing diseases in a retinal scan. It's a very narrow, tight little field. You show it thousands of retinal scans and tell it which ones have diseases, which haven't. And when it sees new images, it can do it better than a human. And this is pretty useful stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But these are slightly different because what we're now doing is training these things as computing power increases on larger and larger data sets. So whether that's image data sets for the image generators or text data sets from the chat GPT. So what this thing is, it's not been programmed, it's just read a lot, you know, on the internet up until 2021. And it's read all this stuff. And so when you ask it a question, it has a language model in the same way that sort of Alexa and technology like that has a language. It can parse a sentence together. It can put a sentence together. And it will find information that it's read and put it in a form where it can tell you about it. Now, they're trying... It wasn't originally designed for what you're using it for here, which is search. They're trying to put it as a front end to search to make search a little bit more natural. But the thing you have to think about is we've all used Alexas. Do you talk to Alexa like you talk to a normal person? No. You're like, Alexa, you know, and you give it a very specific set of commands to do something.
Yes.
And it will understand those commands and do something, but you don't and ah and talk in metaphysical language or chat with it, really. This is a way of getting towards that chat a little bit more, making it a bit more realistic, but in reality, it's kind of the same technology, you know.
That was excellent.
Yeah.
To me, I think that in my mind, AI is, and I don't know what actually I should have looked up the definition, or the Webster Dictionary definition of artificial intelligence, because to me, that's a sentient thing that's like reprogramming itself and learning and growing, but that doesn't appear to be the definition.
I tell all my students, you know, like as soon as you tell anyone about that you're studying AI or transhumanism or any of these kind of concepts, you'll immediately get what I call the bar AI questions, like, are machines going to take over the world? What is that? You know,
that is on my list. How are they going to kill us? Is on my list.
Yeah, I once gave a talk at the MOST, the Science Museum in Syracuse, and they asked me to talk about will machines take over the world, and my first slide just said, no, go home. But Uh,
Well, this ends the comic shop.
No, there's still plenty to talk about.
when in my transhumanism class, which is a graduate seminar in future technology,
Can you explain what transhumanism is?
transhumanism is the study of future technology. So the merging of technology with humans. So we talk about cyborgs a lot, and I'm going to freak you out now that you two are both cyborgs.
Oh, thank God.
And the reason for that is Jonathan's
Jonathan, if
nodding.
you're off camera, he is not a
Oh,
cyborg.
yeah, Jonathan is nodding.
Quickly kill him.
He's heard me talk about this story before, but you both wear glasses, okay? And the very definition of a cyborg is a human whose ability is augmented by a technology. Yeah?
Oh, definitely.
So you wear a pair of glasses that augments your eyesight, but the interesting thing from a transhumanism point of view is that if I was to take your glasses away from you, you would be a completely different person because your abilities would change. So those glasses are kind of part of you as an organism, as a being, yeah? And that's what transhumanism is about. And I know I'm on camera, but right in there, I have a computer chip embedded in my hand.
All right, I was actually. This is good.
How is it not?
I think I freaked him out now.
No, you didn't, because I was actually going to bring up something that and I guess we can say he was a friend in high school, and we went to college together very briefly, and he was doing computer stuff, and he was very much in tune with the computer world, and I think I haven't talked to him in over 15 years, I bet, but at one point in time, he was doing some strange things with like implants and things like that.
Which is transhumanism.
Which
yeah.
I found to be a little not disturbed. Well, he's not moving. It was a little disturbing to me that it's like, why are you doing these things and putting these experimenting with? And I think it was done with a less than scientific approach. It was it was a 20-something-year-old kid who was fascinated with computers who wanted to explore that universe. And to me at the time I was like, that's just not my speed. That's so go into that. That's very interesting.
So, I mean, I got a chip in my hand. I can do all sorts of interesting stuff with it. I can program it to unlock my phone when I pick it up. Unfortunately, I got the chip in the wrong hand. I hold my phone in this hand. So, it doesn't work very well. I downloaded, I got permission from the university to copy my ID card from the university onto a chip. So I can open doors with my hand. And what's funny about that, I can also put money on. So you go into the cafeteria and people say, just touch your card there, and you say, I don't need no stinking card. and it really freaks people out.
Very useful though. You get your wallet.
Just touch your hand.
They would freak me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
Here's the bit I find fascinating is with all this technology with implants, etc. It's the human brain is the most amazing thing about this. Have you heard that you can put magnets into your fingers?
Well, I have not heard of this.
I believe that's one of the things that Jason was doing.
Yeah.
Was doing something like that.
Well, the fingers are one of the most sensitive parts of the body. So you put magnets in there, the nerve endings connect to the magnets, and what does your body send? Kind of electrochemical signals. So the magnet signals are going into the nerves. It takes your brain about 2 weeks, and then your brain realizes you have a completely new sense and just processes it for you. And so you can sense electromagnetic waves from your fingertips.
Jesus Louises.
So you're like an X-Man, you have a new sense. And you can pick up paper clips. With like one finger.
I mean, you can erase hard drives too.
Yeah.
The hero we all need. I can get that paperclip with just a single finger. Oh, thank you, paperclip. Thank you, Magnet Pinky. You saved
my
the
Magnet Pinky.
Keep those files sorted.
And if your next comic is Magnet Pinky Iron, I will want some copyright kind of recognition for that.
We'll share copyright on all the zeros of dollars with that character.
We're getting off subject, which is what we do. what's the Elon Musk chip for your brain? Because there's
Oh,
only.
Neuralink, yeah.
Can you explain that one to me? Do you know this one, Aaron?
No.
Your brain can
Well,
only process so much information at a time. So the theory is that if you have a chip, it can, it's like putting more RAM in your head or something. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. Well, have you seen that awful movie with Keanu Reeves, Johnny Mnemonic?
Oh, love it.
I know, but come on, Keanu's absolutely awful in that movie.
Well,
But
that's what makes it.
that's what makes it. His speech on top of that mind
And
is one of
Ice-T.
what. Ice-T, what's his face? Henry Rollins,
Oh yeah.
Dolph Lundgren. There's a great supporting cast.
I mean, it's just it's the early '90s cyberpunk. You're
Yeah,
starved
well,
for it, so even if you get something,
it's a William Gibson novel,
Yeah.
so it's a great book. But in that book, he has chips in his head that hold information, and it's the same kind of idea you're talking about. And interestingly, most actual computer science comes from science fiction. VR, the internet,
I believe that.
That's so
Yeah.
wild.
all came. A lot of it came from William Gibson and his the Neuromancer. What did he describe it as? A shared hallucination. That was his internet.
It's not wrong.
I know. It's such a great term.
Yeah.
Happens every day here at the
But-
comic shop.
But it's that idea of exactly what you said, putting a chip in your brain that could either improve your processing or improve your memory storage. Now, it's not just Elon Musk company who are doing the Neuralink. They keep saying they're starting human trials, but they were meant to start last year, and now they say it's this year. So we'll see. This technology is coming.
Yeah.
It's not going away. It's going to be a thing, which is why we talk about it in the transhumanism class. It's going to, whether it comes in 10 years or 20 years, it's going to be here. And there's these chips. It comes from research where people were inserting probes into the brain, and you can switch things on and off.
Mm-hmm.
Like depression, like hunger, by stimulating different small parts of the brain. And they discovered they can do this. So they can actually stimulate the brain in certain ways that we know will improve processing, will improve retention. And yes, if we can get this link right, you'll be able to link to like a hard drive where you can store information and retrieve it. But
So you could use a chip to make Jonathan really depressed, and then we'll bring him back, and he'll write his best book ever.
what I suggest you do,
Is that
even the only sensible thing to do is just stick pins in Jonathan's head until he's happy.
That was that acupuncture or is it the Neuralink?
But
Next week on podcast.
the disturbing thing about this is what else they can change with this kind of technology.
Mm-hmm.
They can actually turn on and off things like ambition
Uh-oh.
or certain other emotions. And so what you are doing is changing the person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a kind of, as we discuss in my classes, there's a kind of, why is it any different to taking a drug that changes your neural ability, to do it this way instead? But it is getting towards that kind of sci-fi utopia, everyone's happy kind of horror story that we see in movies, that kind of technology. And that's what scares a lot of people about this use of technology. The chips at the moment are really basic. They don't do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You've probably seen on various news articles people controlling video games with their brain and things like this. You can put. We've got the technology on campus where you can buy very cheap headsets that measure brain waves,
Mm-hmm.
and you can train them to recognize the brain waves, to move left, to move right,
Wow.
and you can control a video game, for example.
That's wild.
But it's simplistic stuff. You know, we're not.
To you.
No, we're not linking with a computer in a kind of sci-fi way and storing terabytes of data. Or, I think in the Johnny Mnemonic film from the 90s, he had about 10 megabytes in his head.
Who would ever need more than 10 megabytes?
Yeah, I know. It's just
Or a
this
couple
crazy amount of data he had in his head.
Two albums of MP3s.
But in the 90s, that was an enormous amount of data. So yeah.
I have seen. There was an artist. He passed away. He had ALS. He was a cartoonist, and he had iLink. It's not exactly the same thing, but he could somehow calibrate where he looked into a contour line drawing. I can't remember the name of the artist.
But we have those machines on campuses in my lab as well. We have eye trackers, which basically just track where you're looking. Yeah. We use them to analyze computer interfaces. So when you look at a web page, where do people look? When you look at a cell phone app, which bits do you look at first? Because obviously wherever people look first, that's where you put the important information, you know?
Right.
Which is the donate here, pay here button.
So we asked ChatGPT a question about the history of the comic shop, and the comic shop is let me switch cameras there. The comic shop's in Oswego.
112 East Bridge Street.
The comic shop is in Oswego, New York, a popular comic book store that's been a fixture of the local community for several decades. The store was originally founded in the 1970s by a group of comic book enthusiasts who wanted to create a space where fans could come together and share their love of the genre.
I like their fake.
Yeah, it's good. Over the years, the comic shop has grown in popularity, expanded its offerings, including not only comic books, but graphic novels, action figures, collectibles, and other related merchandise. That's true. The comic store has also become a hub in the local comic book community, hosting events, signings, and other gatherings for fans and creators alike. So, with the exception of it starting in the 70s by a group of like-minded fans,
it's pretty right. Okay, but this shows you. Aaron and I already talked about most of the stuff we were going to talk in this podcast beforehand.
I appreciate
that.
I appreciate that.
But
I can't help but get into it.
But this exactly shows what you were saying earlier. Mm-hmm. These things are tools.
Yes.
You know, everyone's thinking of them as something big, scary, you know, but AI has been with us for decades. How do you think your cell phone, focuses? Alexa, Google, Netflix recommending movies. You know, all these algorithms are in our lives every day doing things. And ChatGPT and things like this are just another tool. Now, if you wanted to write advertising copy for the comic shop, you could take some of that and put it straight on your webpage.
I'm funnier than ChatGPT.
All right, but just add the line when next time you ask it a question and put at the end of the question or the input, and make it as funny as Evan.
I tried to ask it about me, but there wasn't enough information online. Which I've never used ChatGPT before until about an hour ago. I signed up for an account just to play with it.
It's pretty amazing though, isn't it? It's kind of mind blowing when you see it work for the first time. I mean, I've been teaching this stuff for years. I've been using this technology for years, but first time you see it, that's why it's such a buzz at the moment. Everyone's seeing it for the first time and being blown away by it. But it's going to be used. Real estate, selling houses. Mm-hmm. What you write about a house is kind of the same thing every time. Mm-hmm. You know, humans don't have to do that anymore. You know,
this also, I think this leads a point to. I'm going to parlay this into the job disruption that this type of technology will bring to light, and in particular, I think we should talk about art.
Yeah, that's what.
There's a lot of. There's a lot of talk about AI and art, and again, using it as a tool, or some people are using this and taking credit, saying, I've created this work of art, which is a slippery slope for me, and I think that's more of an ethical thing that, I don't know, I think Aaron's got some strong opinions on, just to throw him under the bus.
I'm not the strongest opinionated guy, because like what we were saying earlier, I recognize the tool component of it. And I know some of the data sets are kind of accumulated unethically or immorally without having the artists opt into it.
There are particular artists that come to light that like their whole catalogs have been, amateur artists where their art catalog is swiped off of DeviantArt load it into
Or
a
professional artists. Professional artists.
Damien's got a
Huge
comment
artists.
here.
Yeah. So, uh, Jonathan and I were just talking about this in the bar before we came here. That um, there's a basically these systems are trained on massive amounts of data, which they troll from the internet. All those images are on the internet,
Yes.
but they are copyrighted. They are owned by people.
Yes.
Now, it's this process where if you use a tool like Photoshop and create a piece of art, you can still copyright that as your work of art. Copyright law at the moment is specially written so that photographs can also be copyrighted. Even though all you're doing is getting a machine, a camera, pressing a button, and it creates, the camera is doing all the work to create the image. Now, there is obviously an artistic...
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that again, it's a tool. It's a piece of equipment of which if you hand a camera to me, you're going to get one type of image. If you hand a camera to my mom, who's a professional photographer, you're going to get a different type of image.
But the same with AI. There will be people who are very good at using AI and getting the right prompts and getting a good image, and people who will be very bad. And so, to me, there's a lot of similarity here. Now, I looked up, because I'm not an expert on this, but I knew you were going to talk about this, so I looked up some stuff, and apparently the distinction they talk about is this idea about transformative and derivative artworks. If you are creating an artwork that is something new, even if it's in a style, it's something new. Or is it derivative, where you're copying someone? And it's a very, very difficult thing to litigate. One of the lawyers I was reading described it as mind-bogglingly complex. So,
and I think that it is, and that's what makes it so interesting, is that we're in uncharted territory here, and this technology will only get better.
I got an article I read this morning. I read a lot of tech news, obviously, it's my job. And this article this morning, there was a court decision yesterday.
Ooh.
Breaking
news.
Yeah, breaking news. There was a comic which came out in October last year that was generated by AI. The images were generated by
Abolition of Man.
No, it was called...
I think there were two that came out.
Zyra of the Dawn, it was called, by Chris Cashanova. And it was awarded a copyright as an original work. Just yesterday, an appeal court overturned that decision and said that the guy's writing, that what he wrote, is copyrighted, but the images generated by the computer cannot be copyrighted. So that's literally how it is at the moment. And Getty Images, who have the big stock image thing,
and they are very litigious.
Yeah, they just in January they started a huge lawsuit against Stable Diffusion, which is the engine used in Midjourney as well for image generation. Basically litigating about the use of these images in their database, and really, people don't expect them to win.
They don't expect Getty to win?
No.
Oh wow!
Because if you look at someone on DeviantArt and like their work, and it influences what you do, you can't really litigate about that. And
that is interesting. Oh, because I hate this argument. Aaron knows that I'm a huge Eric Larson fan. We're Image founder. All I did as a kid,
been plagiarizing him for 30 years.
All I did as a kid was trace his comics, and my style of art nowadays is not his style, but there are elements of that.
His DNA is in there.
Yeah, and I just think about, like, well, if I stole his style and was creating my own art.
But you see, here's the thing.
You can see how difficult it is.
But here's the thing, though, Evan, is that people have been doing that since publishing, right? So there's a popular artist or whatever, and people copy that. It goes back into the very dawn of comics, And we could talk about Joe Madureira and Roger Cruz. We could talk about Jim Lee and all his copycats, Mark Silvestri and all his copycats.
it just feels dirty to me though. Like,
But at least they are
I know.
drawing or tracing.
I'm not agreeing or disagreeing.
yeah, no,
I don't know,
there's no,
but
yeah,
I just think it's a very complex question, and the courts are literally struggling with this right now, and I, I, I I don't know. The issue is this technology is not. The image generation is a very clever technology. It literally, every image it looks at, it can separate out human figures, animals, foreground, background, what objects are, all of this. And so when you say, I want you to build something, to make an image of something, it looks at all the previous images it's seen and kind of builds something using that. But how do we do it as people? We see images of things and we learn what things are. The problem, the AI technology is still pretty stupid in some ways. The famous example that everyone uses, which I'll use as well, is if you ask Stable Diffusion to draw an astronaut riding a horse, it will draw you an astronaut riding a horse. If you ask it to draw a horse riding an astronaut, it will draw you an astronaut riding a horse. It doesn't understand the difference because all the images it's ever seen are humans riding horses. So it's always going to come back to what it's learnt.
it obviously didn't see the cartoon that Aaron drew on the podcast of a horse riding me. So I guess we need more examples of that before the technology can adapt and understand what a horse riding a human looks like.
It will get better, but it understands. The other problem with this technology, which I'd say to people all the time, is we don't have the language to talk about it. I was about to say it understands, but does a computer really understand? We have this language we use for humans that we just throw onto these machines. Intelligence, understanding. It knows this.
It selects words from which to
yeah,
create an image from.
they work in different ways to us. It's not the same as us, but we don't have the language to define the difference in many ways. We're always just anthropomorphizing it into a kind of human. That's why every article you ever see about artificial intelligence has a picture of the Terminator.
That's because it immediately goes to that point.
Yeah, it immediately goes there.
Aaron, maybe you can talk a little bit about abolition of man and maybe your experience using some image generation things and how you use that in your art lately.
So Abolition of Man, I can't remember the author. It was a duo of guys who have a podcast. I think it's called Living the Line. And Dave McKean also did one too called Prompts. I didn't get that one, but I picked up Abolition of Man here. There was 2 issues of it that were published. It was a Lewis Carroll speech he had done somewhere, and they fed. I don't know if they fed the speech into it, but they wanted different images.
He approached it each book in a different way.
Yeah,
the first one, I think he was just feeding the entire page what he wanted on that page.
Okay.
Or maybe what he wanted in the panel.
Yes.
And it was just selecting the first image. Whereas the second book
was more of a narrative.
More of a narrative, and he had an explanation in the back how he curated the images that came through and what he did to kind of make it a more cohesive piece. But it was a great experiment on technology and art and ethics and all of these things that again we talk about today that we're not going to have the answers to, but it was a very interesting.
Yeah, and the art style was interesting too, because you could say do an ink drawing into AI and it's going to look at all these different ink drawings, but it could have something that very much looks like an ink drawing, but it's going to behave in a way because it's going to be pulling from so many different data sets that the ink looks wrong. So it was full of stuff like that, and that was fascinating to me. It was somebody who likes Bill Sienkiewicz or people who like that kind of otherworldly imagery or highly experimental.
There's
interesting in that way.
There's a website, a piece of software online that you can subscribe to. It's a paid service, and it builds comic books called Neural Canvas. But they literally say on their front page, characters may change from panel to panel. So the same character won't look the same because that's the way it works.
Hey, don't to pick on Uncle Rob. He's a good dude.
So yeah, I mean, it kind of defeats the object of, in some ways what it's meant to be. It's, so yeah, I was reading. I've never played with it. I only saw the website, but it's like, well,
So Evan wanted me to talk a little bit about how I've used AI for different things. I haven't done any of the paid things. I haven't done Stable Diffusion or anything like that. But there's one called Crayon. It has AI in it, and for me, because as a creative person who is generating lots of different ideas, it has very specific scenarios. Like I need a figure to be walking through like this double door in front of a window, red curtain. They're wearing a leather jacket and a hat, a ball cap, and I have all these specific things that I can put in there. And then it's ethical or immoral or whatever. But I plug in artists that I'm looking for because certain keywords, certain key artists will give you what you want. So like if you want a nice clear drawing, maybe don't throw in a Bill Sienkiewicz in there. Maybe you throw in a Patrick Nagel in there because he's got very clear, flat colors. Maybe you throw in, anime manga if you want kind of a more kind of a kinetic approach to it. Maybe that kind of color scheme or anatomy. And from that, it's for me, it's kind of like a little slot machine of creativity, and then you just keep pulling the lever. And then you go through like so many things, and it's a bust, it's a bust, it's a bust. You could do that for like an hour, and then an hour and 1 minute, there's like something that just resonates with you, and you're like, this is the pose. I don't know what the rest of the image is, but like it's got most of the right stuff, and there's something about this pose. It's like a photograph. Like you can look through like 100 photographs that you've taken, and that 101st is like that's the one that's got the magic, and that's the one that you then take and develop. And I mean that's how I work. I don't use it as an end product, partially because I like the process. Like that's important to me is to draw that stuff. And I've always kind of been into the digital illustration or like the newer technology. So maybe I'm not as afraid of this as other people because I've always wanted the Cintiq or the iPad or the.
I was afraid of it when you first showed me it because I was like, "Is this cheating? Is this cheating?"
Well, here's the thing, though.
Let me finish.
Okay.
I like sometimes on Sundays I go over to Aaron's, we draw or do something creative, and I feel like when I'm approaching a piece, I understand how anatomy works and how a page works, but I'm not a good cinematographer. That my camera angles are very static, and that was one of the first things I think that with Aaron, we were just looking up something. And it's like all of a sudden it took what I was trying to work in my head, and it found this different angle that my mind never would have come to, and it was like, oh, I understand. Like, and I'm not, I'm just looking and I'm drawing, looking at that like I would a photograph or something like that. But it's like, oh, this is very interesting. That like, it created a new way for me to see this scene that I don't believe I could have arrived to by myself, and in turn, I think the piece worked better. And is it I don't think it's cheating. I think it's.
But here's the thing, and this is my philosophy here. I'm going to steal from some Wally Wood, is that if the end product is superior, are you cheating? I don't think so.
Well, that's just the comics thing in general. Yeah.
Because he would what's that Wally Wood quote? If you can copy it, copy it. If you can trace it, trace it. If you can paste it up, paste it up.
Yeah.
So let me throw something else into the mix.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, the Watson AI system beat Kasparov at chess. That was quite a few years ago.
What year? I mean, this is early 2000s.
Early
right?
2000s, yeah.
20 years? Well, maybe not
So
20 years ago. But.
That computer has had 20 years of getting better at chess. Yeah, that's the thing about AI. It doesn't stop developing. They keep developing it. So where we are now is early days. These things we're seeing are pretty impressive, but these are really just the first generation that are coming out to the. We've been teaching about this stuff for years, but the public is now seeing it for the first time. And so in reality, this is the first generation coming out to see it. In 10 years, this stuff is going to be so much better. And then it's going to be even better 10 years further. It doesn't stop developing.
Evan, let me throw this out to you. I feel like if anybody of note watches me say these things, it's not going to go over well for me. But because I'm in the arts community and they're very not
Yeah.
for this. But I've seen people even that I know. I don't know how they're doing this, but they're putting their own artwork into the data sets, and they're generating work that looks like their work.
That's so weird.
But that's. I was telling Jonathan a story earlier that if you know what you're doing, you can retrain these systems on particular text or on images exactly like that. Yeah, so yeah, if you know what you're doing, you can retrain these things.
Hey, real quick, we asked ChatGTP about the murders that Martin carried out. If you'd like to read that about the murders that Martin
I had
carried
no
out.
idea.
That's why Martin's not here tonight. He's actually locked up in jail waiting trial. But,
I'm sorry, but I cannot provide any information about Martin Kinney and his alleged murders. It is not appropriate or ethical to discuss or speculate about potential criminal activity or any specific individuals without factual evidence or verified sources.
Huh.
It's important to remember that everyone is innocent until proven guilty in the court of law, and making unfounded accusation or spreading rumors can be harmful and damaging to individuals and their families. If you have any concerns or information related to potential criminal activity, it's best to report it to the appropriate authorities and let them handle the investigation.
that's what ChatGTP told us about Martin and his alleged murders. So that's very interesting.
Sounds guilty
Shout
to
out-
sounds
shout out
guilty to me.
Shout out to Martin.
But I just think about because we're talking about like the eye, like the train. So like people who have degenerative diseases who are still wanting to do their creativity. If you could train AI to work off of your own work in your own data sets, and it's good enough where you can start to differentiate from panel to panel and tell your story. Like even if you don't move on to that next piece, there's enough of you in it that it's not unethical or immoral to composite it in that way. And also, who likes to draw like tons and tons of buildings and backgrounds with like 3-point perspective? Maybe somebody does, but that maybe Katsuhiro Otomo or like Masamune Shiro. Maybe they want to do that. I will try to. I don't do it anywhere near as well as them, but I can stumble through it and like fall through a wall and hurt myself doing it, which is how I do it. But it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's let's face it, many, not just going beyond just comic book artists, but many artists use some form of clip art or stock images or all these things in their work. And
Kirby used collage. I mean,
yeah, and so all these things. And again, this is why the legal thing is such a minefield, because all of that already exists, and these AI image generation companies are arguing that they're not doing anything much different.
Yeah, and like even if I think one of the main arguments that the artists are saying is even using like 10% of their work in there is different than like a human recombining it, because it's transformative enough when a human does it, because it's like a total new work, not like a photo bash exactly. But I don't think that AI works like a photo bash. It's like recreating the images from the images that it's seen. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So I recently wrote an article for a film journal about AI and film, because we are starting to generate AI films now. They are awful, but they are being, the narrative is produced by a text generator.
Oh wow.
Image generators are creating the scenes in the movie. All the voices are from AI generated text to speech conversion. And so this is, I wrote an article saying that, look what's happening with images and text. This is coming for film. It's going to be here soon.
Well, I mean, they've already done a deepfake uses a similar technology.
It's similar. I actually met the guys who developed deepfake a couple of years ago. Yeah, at a computer graphics conference. Yeah, it was very cool. Some of the work they were showing us, some of the work they're developing. It's mind blowing. Real time deepfake stuff.
It's wild.
To get back to talk about with making movies,
Yeah.
Joe was talking about it may have been a Twitch stream that was a Seinfeld parody that
Yeah.
was running for.
Oh yeah, non-stop Seinfeld.
And then
I saw that.
eventually it canceled itself, but it was just an auto-generated chat
Yeah.
with figures and.
My favorite story of this, I was showing Jonathan in the bar some scenes from this. So you have to go back to the 1970s. Stanislav Lem is a Russian writer. He wrote Solaris, which became the famous movie. But he also wrote a book called The Futurist Convention. And in that book, there are no more movie stars. There are just computer-generated stars. And this was made into a movie in 2013, which is just called, it's the Futurological Congress, not convention. It was made into a movie called The Congress with Robin Wright, where she sells her image, and she doesn't really exist anymore. There's an image of her that is in all the films. Now, you may not know this, but Bruce Willis, of course, just retired recently with a form of dementia. And he's the first Hollywood star to sell his image to an AI company.
Which is fascinating to me.
So he has sold his image, and the only thing it's been used for so far is a series of commercials on Russian television for cell phones. But these commercials are 30 seconds long, and they are mini movies where Bruce Willis plays a secret agent who escapes from. I was showing Jonathan from some pictures from these movies. They are Bruce Willis movies, and he had nothing to do with them. He didn't know none of his voice, none of his, and this is the future of cinema. It is coming. And there'll always be people who want to see actors, but we're going to see more and more of this kind of technology. It's available now. We're going to see new Humphrey Bogart movies, new Jimmy Stewart movies, you know?
Yeah.
This is
Ant-Man 5, starring Humphrey Bogart.
it is coming, you know, and
it's coming, yeah.
And the point I made to you just before we came on here is, if you reach a point where a consumer, whether they're consuming a novel, a painting, a comic book, a movie, can't tell the difference between one that is generated by a machine or one that's generated by a human, and they like both of them as well. We call this human parity, and we are reaching this point with many of these technologies. And so the implications of that, whether we have computer-generated comics, computer-generated movies, I don't know. Will they become popular? I don't know. But the technology will be there. It's not going away. It's not going backwards.
Right.
You look terrified, even. I'm gonna crawl under the table and cry. You very confidently at the beginning of this, you made not the joke, but you said, when will the robots take over? And you said, never, you can leave now.
I knew you would ask that question.
And I am, because I, with all seriousness, that like, again, the stuff that we're dealing with now, you know, it's not it's not capable of self-editing or self-improvement. But will we reach a point in time where there is something that like is self-editing and self-improving and like will code at a higher level than a human being can code? And
these things, no one person knows how this works. You know, it's been built by computers.
Yeah.
You know, we use computers to build advanced technology and develop it. You probably don't know this, but there is a version or multiple versions of ChatGPT that write computer code. You know, and write it as well as humans.
Well, I know that you can ask it to write you code for certain things.
Yeah.
And, like Joe, who was here earlier, he does coding and things like that. He was explaining, or I don't know what we were talking about. Or talking about something else. A lot of the Magic guys who play are into computer coding.
Yeah,
and that's what they've been
most
saying.
of them use GitHub. It's got a pilot system, which.
And I think that's what he was talking about, is that there's already programs out there where it's like you just tell it what you need and it gives you the block of code, and then you adjust it. It's like you don't have to
write the code.
But,
I know.
But again, it's these programs aren't writing themselves or editing themselves or improving themselves.
No, you've got to see that most of the AI systems we produce are for specific tasks. You know, analyzing a retinal scan, focusing a camera, writing a piece of text, and that's where we are, now we always, again, it's this anthropomorphic thing. We always think about this idea of a machine becoming intelligent, and what we're really talking about is sentience, a form of consciousness, sentience, and again, we don't have the language because machines are not going to have that in any way like us. They might have something different, but it won't be the same as us. And I'm pretty confident, but there is a worry here, and there's a guy called Nick Bostrom who is a scientist at Oxford, and he talks a lot about this, that one of the issues is there are some technologies you can't turn off. And the example he gives is the internet. How would you turn off the internet? You can't. And
just too decentralized.
Too decentralized, and in every country and all over the world, and it's not one server you flick a switch on. You'd have to switch off all the power in the world, to kind of turn off the internet. Now, he's saying, if we do ever get to this point, and it combines with the kind of technology you can't turn off, this is the kind of worry. Now, being realistic on this in my transhumanism class, I am far more worried than about a lot of other things other than AI. So if you want to have nightmares, look at genetic engineering.
CRISPR?
CRISPR and things.
Explain what CRISPR is.
CRISPR allows you to edit gene sequences. Although my bio says I'm a biology professor with a massive my knowledge of biology,
embryonic development, technology from
all those words I don't even know what they mean, but I'm no expert in this. But if you start, what I've read about this is that what used to be a multi-million-dollar genetics lab can now be built in someone's basement. And many of these tools are AI powered. The massive advances in medical science of identifying the whole human genome, protein folding, all powered by AI. The volume of medical knowledge being produced is astonishing and useful.
Martin and I use the term protein folding a lot, but it's for something totally different.
Pizzas?
Depends on the type of pizza. We can't just be carb folded.
But if you can, you could have someone with enough knowledge, knows how to use CRISPR, who can start building viruses in their basement. And that terrifies me way more than any AI stuff.
Aaron, what keeps you up at night?
Not much. And it's not because I don't have any anxiety or worries. It's just like once it hits 8:30, I'm like done. Which is as a human, I do have that shut off switch where it's like, past a certain point, which works out well for me, I think, in most regards.
So the robots aren't going to kill us, but is there a possibility that we just, like your transhumanist things, do we just become robots? Is that the end game?
My, as I said about you wearing glasses, you're kind of cyborg. It is, and we all have this relationship with technology. We all hold these things in our hands, which connect us to all the knowledge in the world.
Yes.
That's not a human ability.
Mm-hmm.
We're already post-human. We're already in this kind of phase where we have lots of things we can do that we couldn't do before. And the only thing separating us from the internet is this little piece of plastic. I already have a chip in my head, and we're going to directly interface to this stuff at some point.
Some point soon.
Yeah, I mean, they've developed a whole bunch of, again, from my transhumanism class, we look at this stuff, ways to connect digital technology to nerve endings, and process signals from nerve endings into digital, which is what the Neuralink and that are doing as well. And so people are already working on this to connect us connect the human to technology. And William Gibson, I've seen him speak a few times in person, and I remember in one of his talks he was saying that this idea of connecting directly, his all the Matrix was based on William Gibson, as you probably know. Jacking into the Matrix is all his kind of terminology.
Jacking into the Matrix, that's another term. But it has a different meaning.
Oh boy.
As William Gibson said, if you were able to directly connect to technology, who's going to control that flow of information? Corporations. So you're going to have commercials coming directly into your cerebral cortex. And he said, well, why is it going to be any different to the internet? You know?
Yeah.
And he's right. Another terrifying thought.
That's probably more terrifying to me than the virus. Which is why I pay for a YouTube Premium, because I just got tired of the commercials.
Do you have any other art or AI or? I feel like this was a really good discussion.
Yeah, I feel like
do another hour on
yeah, I don't want to be greedy with time, but yeah, there's definitely we covered a lot of ground. This is probably our smartest podcast ever.
This was our most. If I wasn't here, this would be our most intelligent podcast.
I hate to be the cause of that. It'll give me a bad reputation.
I think we got enough dick and fart jokes in.
Oh boy.
I don't know. Jonathan, you have anything? Here, let me turn your mic on. Jonathan's
No.
he's sitting in. Tell us about your book. When's your book coming out?
Terrified of AI being able to write my book.
Or do you just give it enough? Because like the thing that Evan forgot is like if he writes the jokes into ChatGPT will reorganize.
It'll reuse those jokes.
It'll reorganize the jokes, and you can see some other possibilities.
One of the things.
Joke writing's too far now.
There's a real skill to how you put input into chat. I actually prefer GPT to chat GPT-3 to chat GPT. It produces more. It was funny, this article I published in the Film Journal, I did write the article, but the abstract for it was created by GPT-3, you know. And I had to admit that to the editor, and they had to put a little disclaimer on it, and you know.
Are we going to get to the point where when students write papers, they have AI do like Chicago style formatting?
Well,
like
this is what I was going to say that tied in. What I've discovered when if I use this stuff to write, when you get it to write things, when it produces something and it's not quite right, like you were saying, producing the 100 images, you just play with the input and keep changing it and say, add these, you know, put more academic references in it, make it more like that, and you know, it gets there eventually, but it's a process. It's not an immediate thing, you know, but yeah, it can actually come to the point of doing something. I mean, the professors on campus are all panicking like mad about this, of course, because you can't check for plagiarism. And there are, here's something that you might be interested in. I did check on. There is a...
Jonathan, I've got to turn your mic off. No, I'm kidding.
An artist collective called Spawning have built a tool that checks whether your images were used in the training set.
Oh, is that haveibeentrained.com?
Yeah, have I been trained? Yeah.
I did go to that, and I found it once. The original like Wesley the Robot redesign as he appears now that I did in 2007. I was able to find it when I typed in Robot DJ, and since I've gone back probably like 4 or 5 times. I can no longer find it, even with endless scrolling.
I've never used it, or I just read about it. So yeah, it's just an interesting thing.
And I'm somebody.
But yeah. What's interesting is they allow you to opt out, and so you can remove your art from the training set. So if you are an artist and you're concerned, you can take your art. If you find your art in Stable Diffusion's training set, you can take it out.
Which is a good step. Hopefully it's pretty easy. One thing, I don't know why I did this several years ago, but I removed most of my artwork from DeviantArt. I don't know, maybe 5 or 7 years ago. I just felt like it was too much out there, and I just wanted to like control where it was or put it on my own website if somebody was going to see my artwork. So maybe that was smart in lieu of everything that's going on here. But that image of the robot is it's my avatar on DVNet. So I wonder if that's where they got it. But yeah, this imaging stuff is interesting. Like, because I like the technology, but I also don't want to hurt, people in the creative fields.
As we talked about earlier before this podcast, that just like any, we call it disruptive technology, technology that comes in and changes things. Cell phones, that my favorite example is augmented reality. NASA, the military, and a few universities were working with augmented reality. And then one week, Pokemon Go came out.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, everyone's using it. It's an everyday technology, so fast to change.
What was that, summer of 2017
Something
or
like
something?
that.
I was working at Wegmans.
But,
and every child from 5 years old to 60 adult of 60 were all playing Pokemon Go in the Wegmans. And I was like, what is going on?
But this technology now of holding your phone over something and augmenting the real world with digital information is just everyday technology now.
Oh, I saw somebody going back to comics here, because this is kind of like the thing I'm studying all the time. Is they have like Japanese style comics now that you can hold your phone up to, and it will swap out the Japanese characters for as close as the program can get to an English translation.
I travel a lot, as you know, and I use the Google Translate.
Google Translate's amazing.
Not just for speech, but you just hold the camera over a menu and you can see, in English, whatever you want. Street signs, menu. I couldn't survive without it in Vietnam. It's great. Anyway, but the point is with this disruptive technology that I see, yes, it will change jobs. People who work in some fields, how they work will change, but people will still have jobs. They'll just have different jobs. It's a technology. It's a tool, as you said.
Well, I mean, the way I look at it, I'm sure a lot of people won't like what I say on this, but it's essentially like I'm using machine learning to make myself better. So I can scour the web for public domain images, and that's kind of what I did for a lot of things that I don't have great reference images of. And you don't even need to do that. You can use images, because when you redraw it, you make it enough of your own that you don't need to worry about that. But I just, going to school for art and asking these questions, and it's like, well, let's have this other layer of separation just to make sure. But so now, like, let's say I want to make my stuff look a little bit more kinetic, a little less stiff. Now I bring in the manga, the anime. Like maybe I talk about Katsuhiro Otomo or Matsumi Nishiro, who are great at motion. And I start to put my situations in with a little bit of their flavor to it. And so now it's me, a human, like drawing it, but I'm using the reference that I'm compiling, and no one else has that same exact reference image, because it's all a unique data set providing that image. So like I'm not giving up on the hand drawing, because that's who I am. That's my love in life, But I'm like, the Borg assimilates into their thing, right? But now I'm trying to do the reverse, where I'm like, give me your machine learning, and I'll absorb it in my organic brain.
The thing you said there about people not liking it, there is this, again, it's this kind of human chauvinism. This, we feel like we're special. We don't want a machine to be better at chess. We don't want a machine to draw better than we do. We don't want to. we are all these special things, and we find it very hard to admit that machines can do things that we didn't think they could. And I think which is why especially the art community are up in arms about this. I mean, Miyazaki said, what was it, that computer-generated art is an insult against humanity, and people do revolt against this. They just don't like the idea that a machine could create something,
Yeah, my natural inclination as somebody who grew up on like RoboCop and all that stuff is like, it's like, oh, but I like that. It's like, and everybody's like, that's bad. It's like, but it's so cool though. It's like maybe it's fascinating.
I mean. With this article I just published, I was trying to tell people, look, this is coming.
Yeah.
And you have to, instead of fighting it, it's not going to go away. You have to learn to adapt with the tools that are going to be around. It's like when, and we've always had this. Photoshop came out, and everyone thought it was the end of drawing. You know, it's we've always had people revolting against the you know, a kind of Luddite mentality in some way. You know, it's a natural human thing, but you know, we do need to be aware that this is here. It's not going away.
And it's going to change. And I mean, there's so many things that are already kind of programmed into, like just using the magic wand tool in Photoshop has gotten so much better about like finding the edges of things or things that can auto remove, you know, you know, aberrations in your image or a figure that you don't want to be there. There's so much more automation for that now, which is saving so much time for, you know, away from the tedious things, so that maybe those creative people can now do their more fulfilling human things.
All right, we're wrapping it up. Damien, any final words in regards to AI or where we're heading? I mean, I think we touched on a lot of things here.
Yeah, the robots are. You'll be dead before the robots take over the world, so don't worry.
Aaron, good luck with your daughter. She'll have to fight the robots. And we'll be dead. Jeez Louise.
Well, well, if they look at the transcript of who she is, hopefully they'll be like, oh, we like her. Her dad made a robot comic book.
Yeah, that's true. You're one step ahead of them. All right. I think that's it. I think.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I would just take us home.
You've been listening to the Comic Shop Does a Podcast. I'm going to be soon replaced. My name's Aaron Z. Lee.
I'm Evan Coy. I'm AI generated, and we're here today with our very special guest,
Damien Schofield.
Schofield.
Yeah, I know.
Passionate biologist.
Hey, I didn't create those lower thirds.
Have a
On the
good night,
record.
everybody.
Thank you.